It's no April Fool's Day joke. Beer, wine, and spirits will cost more tomorrow. Every year, the federal government raises the price of booze with a tax increase tied to inflation.
Before you crack open your next beer, you might want to hear this. Some of the most popular beer brands in America may contain ingredients and residues that raise serious questions about what you're actually putting into your body. From pesticide traces in grains to chemical byproducts created during processing, there's more going on inside that bottle than most people realize. And here's the problem. Beer is one of those drinks people consume casually, at parties, after work, during games. It feels normal, harmless, even routine. But what if the brands you trust the most are the ones you should be questioning? And it gets worse, because many of these beers are mass-produced using lower quality ingredients, shortcuts in brewing, and additives that are designed to improve taste, shelf life, or consistency, not your health. Some reports have even raised concerns about trace levels of substances linked to farming chemicals and filtration processes. Whether those levels are considered safe or not, the bigger question is, do you really want to be consuming them regularly without knowing? Today, we're counting down 10 beer brands you may want to avoid drinking. And some of these might shock you, especially the ones you see everywhere. But before we get into it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because I post videos exposing foods and drinks you might want to think twice about. Let's get into it. Bud Light. Bud Light is one of the most widely consumed beers in the United States, and because of that, it's often seen as a safe, everyday choice. It's light, easy to drink, and marketed as something you can enjoy casually without thinking too much about it. But here's the part most people don't question: how a beer like this is actually made at such a massive scale. When you're producing beer in extremely large quantities, consistency becomes the priority. And to achieve that consistency, large-scale breweries often rely on highly processed ingredients and streamlined brewing methods. One of the biggest concerns raised around beers like Bud Light is the quality of the base ingredients. Instead of focusing purely on traditional brewing components, some mass-produced beers use adjunct grains like corn or rice to reduce cost and create a lighter taste. While this is allowed and widely practiced, it also means the final product is far removed from traditional beer recipes, and it gets worse when you consider agricultural practices. Some reports and independent tests over the years have suggested that trace amounts of pesticide residues, such as glyphosate, have been detected in certain beers. These levels are often considered within regulatory limits, but the idea of consuming even trace amounts regularly raises concerns for many people. Another issue is filtration and processing. To achieve that ultra-clear, uniform appearance, beers like Bud Light go through extensive filtration processes, which can involve multiple steps that strip away natural components. The result is a product that is extremely consistent, but also heavily processed. Another factor is perception. Because Bud Light is marketed as a light beer, people often assume it's a healthier option and drink it more frequently or in larger quantities. And that's where things start to add up. It's not just about one bottle, it's about regular consumption over time. So while Bud Light might seem like a harmless, everyday drink, it represents the mass production side of the beer industry, where convenience, cost, and consistency often come before quality. And that's exactly why it's worth thinking twice about. 2. Coors Light. Coors Light is another major name that's often associated with refreshment and simplicity. It's marketed as cold, clean, and easy to drink, which makes it a go-to choice for a lot of people. But just like Bud Light, there's more happening behind the scenes than most people realize. One of the biggest concerns with beers like Coors Light is the level of processing involved in achieving that consistent taste and appearance. Large-scale production requires strict control over every step, and that often leads to a more industrial approach to brewing. This can include the use of adjunct ingredients like corn syrup or other fermentable sugars to create a lighter body and reduce production costs. While these ingredients are approved and commonly used, they change the nature of the beer compared to traditional brewing methods. And it gets worse when you look at ingredient sourcing. Just like other mass-produced beers, the grains used may come from large-scale agricultural systems where pesticides and herbicides are commonly applied. Some independent findings have suggested the presence of trace residues in certain beer samples, which raises questions about long-term exposure, even if levels are considered safe by regulators. Another issue is the filtration and clarification process. Coors Light is known for its clear appearance. and achieving that requires multiple processing steps. These processes are designed to remove impurities and maintain consistency, but they also contribute to how processed the final product becomes. Another factor is how it's consumed. Because it's marketed as a light, refreshing beer, people often drink it in larger quantities without thinking about it. It doesn't feel heavy, so it's easy to keep going. And that's exactly where the concern builds: frequency and volume. So while Coors Light might seem clean and simple on the surface, it's actually a product of large-scale industrial brewing where efficiency and consistency play a major role. And once you start looking at it that way, it becomes clear why it's worth questioning. 3. Miller Lite. Miller Lite is another one of those beers that feels completely normal. It's been around for decades, it's easy to find, and it's often marketed as a lighter, smarter choice compared to heavier beers. But here's the part most people don't stop to think about. What does light actually mean in this context? In most cases, it means the beer has been modified and processed to reduce calories and create a smoother, easier to drink experience. And while that might sound appealing, it also raises questions about how that result is achieved. One of the biggest concerns is the use of adjunct grains and added fermentable ingredients to alter the texture and taste. These ingredients help create a lighter body, but they also move the product further away from traditional brewing methods. And it gets worse when you consider the level of consistency required in mass production to make sure every can tastes exactly the same. Large breweries rely on highly controlled processes, which can include additional steps that strip away natural variation. Another issue is the sourcing of ingredients. Just like other large-scale beers, the grains used may come from conventional farming systems, where pesticides and herbicides are widely used. Some independent testing has raised concerns about trace residues in beer, and while these levels are often considered acceptable, many people question whether regular exposure is something they want to risk. Another factor is how it's consumed. Because Miller Lite is positioned as a lighter option, people tend to drink more of it in one sitting. It doesn't feel heavy, so it's easy to keep going without thinking about the cumulative effect. And that's where the real issue begins. Not just what's in the beer, but how often and how much is being consumed. So while Miller Lite might seem like a safer or lighter choice, it still follows the same pattern: highly processed, mass-produced, and designed for easy consumption. And once you look at it more closely, it's clear why it's worth questioning. 4. Busch Light. Busch Light is often seen as one of the more affordable beer options, and because of that, it's extremely popular for casual drinking. It's simple, inexpensive, and easy to find almost anywhere. But here's the reality. When a product is made to be that affordable at such a large scale, there are usually compromises involved. One of the biggest concerns with Busch Light is the quality of ingredients used in production. Like many budget-friendly beers, it often relies on adjunct grains, such as corn, to reduce costs and create a lighter flavor profile. While this is a common practice, it means the beer is less focused on traditional brewing quality and more on efficiency. And it gets worse when you think about processing. To maintain consistency across millions of cans, the brewing process becomes highly standardized, with multiple steps designed to ensure uniform taste and appearance. This can include filtration and processing methods that further distance the final product from what many would consider traditional beer. Another issue is the sourcing of raw materials. Large-scale production often depends on conventional agriculture, where the use of pesticides and herbicides is common. Some reports have pointed to trace residues in various beers, and while these levels may fall within regulatory limits, it still raises questions about long-term exposure. Another factor is consumption habits. Because Busch Light is so affordable and easy to drink, it's often consumed in larger quantities. It's not seen as something to sip slowly. It's something people drink casually and frequently. And that's where the concern builds over time. It's not just about what's in one can, but how often it's being consumed. So while Busch Light may seem like a convenient and budget-friendly option, it represents the same pattern: mass production, cost efficiency, and heavy processing. And once you look at it from that perspective, it becomes clear why it's worth thinking twice about. 5. Natural Light. Natural Light is often known for one thing: being extremely cheap, everyday use. But here's the part most people don't question: how a beer can be produced at such a low cost while still being sold at such a massive scale. The answer usually comes down to ingredient quality and processing shortcuts. One of the biggest concerns with Natural Light is the reliance on adjunct ingredients like corn and other fermentable sugars instead of sticking to traditional brewing components. These ingredients help reduce production costs and create that light, mild taste, but they also make the beer more processed and less nutritionally actually meaningful. And it gets worse when you consider how standardized the production process is. To keep the flavor consistent across millions of cans, the brewing process is highly controlled, often prioritizing efficiency over quality. Another issue is ingredient sourcing. Like other mass-produced beers, the grains used are typically grown in large-scale agricultural systems, where pesticides and herbicides are commonly used. Some independent testing has suggested trace levels of residues in certain beers, and while these are often considered safe by regulatory standards, the idea of consuming them regularly raises concerns for many people. Another factor is how this beer is consumed. Because it's so affordable and light, people tend to drink it in larger quantities without thinking about it. It doesn't feel heavy, so it's easy to keep going. And that's exactly where the problem builds. It's not just about one can, it's about repeated consumption over time. So while Natural Light may seem like a convenient and budget-friendly option, it represents the extreme end of mass-produced beer, where cost-cutting and efficiency play a major role. And that's exactly why it's worth thinking twice about. 6. Keystone Light. Keystone Light is another beer that falls into the same category. Affordable, widely available, and designed for easy drinking. It's often marketed as smooth and refreshing, which makes it appealing for casual consumption. But here's the reality, that smoothness is not accidental. It's the result of a highly controlled and processed brewing method designed to create a consistent and easy-to-drink product. One of the main concerns with Keystone Light is the use of adjunct grains and added fermentable ingredients to lighten the body and reduce production costs. While this is common in large-scale brewing, it means the final product is far removed from traditional beer recipes, and it gets worse when you think about the level of filtration involved. To achieve that clear, uniform look, the beer goes through multiple processing steps, which can strip away natural elements and leave behind a more standardized product. Another issue is ingredient sourcing. Just like other budget beers, the grains used are often grown using conventional farming methods, where pesticides and herbicides are widely applied. Some independent reports have pointed to trace residues in beer samples, and while these are usually within acceptable limits, many people question whether regular exposure is something they should ignore. Another factor is consumption behavior. Because Keystone Light is so easy to drink and relatively inexpensive, it's often consumed in large amounts. People don't treat it as something to enjoy occasionally. It becomes a regular habit, and that's where the real concern lies. Over time, frequent consumption of highly processed beverages can add up in ways people don't immediately notice. So while Keystone Light may seem simple and harmless, it follows the same pattern: mass production, lower cost ingredients, and heavy processing. And once you look at it from that perspective, it becomes clear why it's worth questioning. 7. Pabst Blue Ribbon. Pabst Blue Ribbon, often called PBR, has built a reputation as a classic American beer. It's simple, affordable, and has a strong cultural identity, especially among younger drinkers. But here's the part most people don't think about. Behind that classic image is still a mass-produced product built for efficiency and consistency. One of the biggest concerns with PBR is the use of adjunct ingredients like corn syrup during the brewing process. While this is a common practice and approved for use, it changes the overall composition of the beer compared to traditional brewing methods that rely purely on malted grains. And it gets worse when you consider the scale of production. When a beer is produced in such large volumes, maintaining consistency becomes the top priority, which often leads to a more industrial approach. Another issue is ingredient sourcing. Like many large-scale beers, the grains used may come from conventional farming systems where pesticides and herbicides are widely used. Another factor is how PBR is consumed. Because it's affordable and easy to drink, it's often consumed in larger quantities, especially in social settings. It doesn't feel like a premium drink. It feels casual, which lowers people's guard. And that's exactly where the issue builds over time. So while Pabst Blue Ribbon may feel like a nostalgic, harmless choice, it still follows the same pattern: mass production, cost efficiency, and processed ingredients. And once you look beyond the branding, it becomes clear why it's worth thinking twice about. 8. Michelob Ultra. Michelob Ultra is often marketed as a healthier beer option. Low carbs, fewer calories, and a clean image. It's positioned as something you can drink without guilt. But here's the problem. Healthier doesn't always mean healthy. In many cases, achieving that low-calorie profile requires additional processing and formulation adjustments. One of the biggest concerns is how the beer is designed to be lighter. This often involves modifying the brewing process and using specific ingredients to reduce calories while maintaining taste. And while this is effective from a marketing standpoint, it also means the product is more engineered than people realize. Another issue is perception. Because Michelob Ultra is seen as a fitness-friendly beer, people tend to drink it more frequently without thinking about it. They assume it's a safer option, so they lower their guard. And that's where the problem builds. Another factor is ingredient sourcing. Just like other large-scale beers, the grains used may come from conventional agriculture, where pesticides and herbicides are commonly applied. Some reports have pointed to trace residues in beer, and while these are often within acceptable limits, the idea of repeated exposure raises questions. Another concern is how it fits into daily habits. Because it's marketed as a lighter option, it's often consumed more casually and more often than other beers. And over time, that frequency matters more than the slight difference in calories. So while Michelob Ultra may seem like a smarter choice, it still follows the same pattern: processed, mass-produced, and designed for convenience. And that's exactly why it's worth questioning. 9. Corona Extra is one of the most recognizable beers worldwide, often associated with relaxation, beaches, and a laid-back lifestyle. But here's the part most people overlook. The clear glass bottle that makes it look premium actually comes with its own issue. Exposure to light can affect the beer, leading to a condition often referred to as light-struck flavor. This happens when UV light interacts with compounds in the beer, altering its taste and quality. And while many people may not notice it directly, it raises questions about how the product is packaged and preserved. Another concern is the large-scale production behind the brand. Just like other global beers, Corona is produced in massive quantities, which means the focus is on consistency and shelf life. That often involves processing methods and ingredient sourcing practices similar to other mass-produced beers. Another factor is how it's consumed. Corona is often associated with relaxation and social settings, which means it's consumed casually and frequently. And just like other beers on this list, that frequency adds up over time. So while Corona Extra may feel like a premium, easygoing choice, it still comes with concerns that are easy to overlook. 10. Heineken is often seen as a more premium international beer, which makes people assume it's a higher quality option. And while it may differ slightly from budget beers in some areas, it's still a mass-produced product designed for global distribution. One of the biggest concerns is the scale at which it's produced. To maintain a consistent taste across different countries and markets, the brewing process is highly standardized. And while that ensures reliability, it also means the product is heavily controlled and processed. Another issue is ingredient sourcing. Like many global beer brands, the raw materials used may come from large-scale agricultural systems where pesticides and herbicides are commonly used. Another concern is perception. Because it's seen as a premium beer, people tend to trust it more and question it less. And that's where the issue lies. The less you question something, the more likely you are to consume it regularly without thinking. So while Heineken may appear to be a better option on the surface, it still follows the same pattern: large-scale production, standardized processes, and potential concerns that are easy to overlook. And that's exactly why it deserves a closer look. Now that you've seen the beer brands you might want to avoid, the next question is obvious. Does that mean you have to stop drinking beer completely? Not necessarily. The goal isn't to eliminate beer. It's to choose options that are made with better ingredients, more traditional brewing methods, and less industrial processing. Because not all beer is created the same. Some are mass-produced for consistency and cost, while others focus on quality, sourcing, and simpler brewing techniques. So now let's shift from what to avoid to what you can actually feel better about drinking. Healthy alternative. Number 1, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is often considered a better option compared to mass-produced beers, mainly because of its focus on traditional brewing methods and ingredient quality. Unlike many large-scale beers that rely heavily on adjunct grains, Sierra Nevada sticks closer to a more classic brewing approach, using malted barley, hops, yeast, and water. That simplicity alone makes a noticeable difference. One of the biggest advantages here is transparency. Craft-style breweries, like Sierra Nevada, tend to be more open about their ingredients and processes, which allows consumers to understand what they're actually drinking. Another important point is ingredient sourcing. While no product is perfect, craft-style breweries often place more emphasis on quality control and sourcing, which can reduce some of the concerns associated with large-scale industrial production. But here's the key takeaway. This is still beer. It's not something to consume excessively, and moderation still matters. The benefit here comes from choosing a product that is less processed and more aligned with traditional brewing. And once you start making that shift, it naturally changes your overall drinking habits. Healthy alternative number 2, Samuel Adams Boston Lager. Samuel Adams Boston Lager is another option that is often considered a step up from standard mass-produced beers. What makes it different is the focus on balanced brewing and ingredient quality rather than just cost efficiency and large-scale production. While it is still widely distributed, it maintains a brewing style that is closer to traditional methods compared to many mainstream brands. One of the biggest advantages is the use of more straightforward ingredients. Instead of relying heavily on adjunct grains to cut costs, this beer focuses more on malted barley and carefully selected hops, which contributes to a more natural flavor profile. Another key point is perception. Unlike beers that are marketed as light or easy, this one doesn't encourage overconsumption in the same way. It's positioned more as something to enjoy rather than something to drink endlessly. However, it's still important to remember that no beer is completely safe in unlimited amounts. The goal is not to find a perfect option, but to choose better alternatives that reduce unnecessary processing and improve overall quality. The type of beer you choose and how often you drink it is what really matters. Some brands are heavily processed, built for mass production, and designed for easy, frequent consumption. Others focus more on quality, tradition, and balance, and that difference can have a bigger impact than most people realize over time. If this video made you think twice before your next drink, hit the like button so more people can discover it. Share this with someone who drinks beer regularly without ever questioning what's inside. And if you want more videos like this, exposing everyday foods and drinks and helping you make smarter choices, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the things we consume the most are the ones we question the least.